So, welcome to the Goa Arts and Literature Festival and to Goa, Jonathan. I think your third time to
That's
Galf.
right.
Yeah.
It's always great to be here.
In Goa. So, 10 years back, I think when we first met, I had taken, got your book, the first Firangis. And now, you come to talk about this latest book of yours. I'm showing it to the audience, The Girl from Fergana. Is that the right pronunciation?
That's right.
Fergana, Secrets of My Mother's Chinese Chest, which you discussed yesterday at the festival, So, coming straight to the book, I wanted to, I attended the session, and what intrigued me or what interested me is this deep research that you had to do. Tell us a little about your mother's Chinese tea chest to begin with.
Okay. So when I was growing up, I lived in a very sparsely decorated house because my parents weren't very wealthy. My mother was a refugee. We didn't have relatives. But there was one piece of furniture in the house, which was this Chinese tea chest. And it had this extraordinary power because, number one, it was an absolutely beautiful work of art. It was carved with these beautiful designs, images of monks on jetties with these Chinese junks behind them. There was also a monkey man talking to one of the monks. And as a small child, I was fascinated by this. But I became even more fascinated by the chest because I knew that secrets from my mother's life were stored inside it. And I became even more curious about those secrets because my mother would never allow us to open the chest. Every time I tried to prise it open, because the chest was stuffed full of not only straw but also naphtha, it would emit this very strong smell. And my mother would somehow pick up on it immediately and come flying from another room and scream and slam it shut. So I grew up thinking, what is my mother's story? And it's taken me many, many decades before I've been able to commit it to paper, but here it is.
Fantastic. So, yesterday while you were discussing the book, you mentioned that you had to go to Fergana Valley to do research because that's where your mother spent 5 years of her life, that is pre-war.
During the war.
During the Second World War. And so tell us about her Polish Jewish origins, your mother's, and the life she led for those 5 years in Fergana Valley.
So my mother was born in Warsaw to a very bourgeois Polish Jewish family. Her father was a prosperous copper merchant whose business had become transcontinental. He had offices not only in Warsaw but also Lvov and Constantinople or Istanbul. And that was the life before the war. After war broke out, my mother's family they shifted to Lvov, and from there they were deported by the Soviets to a camp, a labor camp, narrowly missing the German invasion of Lvov, and all the extended family, my mother's Freud family, all ended up in Auschwitz. So the deportation to a labor camp actually was what saved them. They spent just 1 year in a labor camp before the Polish government in exile threw its lot behind the Soviet Union. And the leaders of the Soviet Union decided that the Polish Jews detained in camps were now free, but they were deported again to Central Asia to work in cooperative farms and help basically produce food for the supply chains that had been badly affected by the front on the west, the fight with the Germans. So my mother spent the next 5 years in a small market town called Uzgen in the Fergana Valley. These were very difficult times. They'd arrived as absolutely impoverished refugees. Within 3 days of arrival, her father died of typhoid. 2 years later, her mother died of cancer. And so my mother was orphaned and living in a mud hut in Uzgen. But it was also, despite the trauma, an extraordinarily powerful time for my mother in good ways as well. she developed friendships that I think affected her personality for the rest of her life, important, meaningful friendships, including with the person who shares the role of title character of this book. My mother is the girl from Fergana, but there's another girl from Fergana, Kamra Khan, who was the girl living in the next room. It was a 2-room mud hut, and the landlord who owned the mud hut was an Uzbek Muslim. His daughter was just 6 months younger than my mother, and they became very close friends. Kamra Khan called my mother Oppa, meaning older sister, and their bond was something I never knew about until my mother began to develop Alzheimer's, and some memories. She couldn't remember what she'd done in the morning, but memories from 60, 70 years ago started welling up, as if she felt the need to articulate them before they disappeared for good. And the memory of Kamra Khan was so extraordinarily powerful for me that it became the emotional heart of this book.
Were you able to meet this second girl from Fergana?
No. I tried to find any trace of her. It proved impossible to locate her. I went through records. Now that the Fergana Valley has been partitioned, we also have a problem of different national archives, different languages. She was an Uzbek girl, but she'd grown up in a town that is now in Kyrgyzstan. So the Kyrgyz archives are written in still in Cyrillic script. The Uzbek archives are now, there are parts in the old Cyrillic script, but the Uzbeks adopted Roman script after independence in 1992. Okay. And all I knew was her first name. I didn't know her last name. So it proved impossible to find her.
Impossible, yeah. Okay. You know, you mentioned that your mother was afflicted with Alzheimer's, and that she forgot English, which was the last language she learnt, and she went down to, interestingly, Polish and Hebrew and all that. So tell us a little about that, and how you managed to communicate with her.
Well, it was incredibly difficult. On the one hand, Polish and Hebrew were languages that I'd learned to speak a little bit of when I was a small child. My mother spoke these languages to me, but I never acquired proficiency in them because by the time I was 4 or 5, my parents, this was the 60s, and the conventional wisdom in the West was that if a child is multilingual, their intellectual development will be impeded. Clearly the West had no experience of what Indians experience every day, starting a sentence in one language and moving to a second and perhaps even a third by the time they finish it. So I got a completely monolingual education. Alzheimer's is such a cruel disease because it strips away memory layer by layer in reverse order. So the last language my mother had learned was English. It was the first language she forgot. So she started speaking in Polish and Hebrew, but she also, every now and then, would toss up terms in Uzbek. And I'd known that she could speak Uzbek. I'd visited Uzbekistan with her in 1988 and had heard her unleash a torrent of abuses at someone who had threatened her on the street. And I said to her, "What's that language?" And she said, "I didn't know I could still speak that." It was Uzbek that she'd learned in Uzgen and the market. But once her Alzheimer's began to kick in, she would every now and then throw up phrases in Uzbek. And startlingly for me, by this point I'd moved to India, I'd learned Hindi and Urdu, and there were many terms in her Uzbek that I could understand because Uzbek, like Hindi and Urdu, shares many words with Persian. So what was mushkil for her was difficult for me. What was asan for her was easy for me. She spoke about naan. She spoke about anar, which grows in the Fergana Valley. She also would speak about mohabbat, and it is one of the most moving things for me. That I'd lost the mother who loved me in English, which was the language we spoke with each other.
Wow.
But I could connect with her
Yeah.
through Mohabbat,
Through Mohammed.
in this unlikely connection between Uzbek and Hindi, Urdu.
Amazing. Coming to Hindi, you know, a lot of people may not know that you're an Indophile and you teach at the Ashoka University and you have an Indian wife. So मुझे तो हिंदी में बात करना है आपसे.
ठीक है.
हाँ, तो ये जो पहली किताब थी ना, फर्स्ट फिरंगीज, वो किताब में बहुत सारा रिसर्च आपने किया. एंड वो किताब क्यों लिखा आपने, बता सकते हैं थोड़े बात? हाँ.
बहुत काम था और बहुत मुश्किल था मेरे लिए, क्योंकि आर्काइव्स बहुत जुबान में थे. और जब मैं इंडिया पहुंच गया, मैं हिंदी नहीं बोलता था.
करेक्ट.
लेकिन आजकल थोड़ा सा और आसान मेरे लिए हैं
हिंदी बोलना.
तो मैं हिंदी बोल रहा हूँ. तो और इस किताब में अभी हिंदी है, कुछ
हिंदी का जिक्र है. Very nice. So this, what I found fascinating about First Firangis is that, you have taken a topic where you've spoken about different kind of white people who came to India and then became Indian, So can you tell me one or two of those inspirational people in that book that, drove you to actually write that book?
Well, why don't I, because we're here in Goa, talk about the two Goans in the book.
Yeah.
I write about two Firangis who came here, and they didn't only come here, they adapted. They became, in some way, Desi. So the first is Garcia da Horta, who is very well known to most Goans because there is that garden in...
There's a park in Panjim,
But Garcia da Horta was, of course, a Jewish physician and botanist who avoided the Inquisition in Portugal by moving to Goa. Unfortunately, the Inquisition would eventually catch up with him and his family here after Francis Xavier demanded its institution. Garcia da Horta, this isn't very well known. He disappeared from Goa for a few years to escape the Inquisition, and he went to the Sultanate of Ahmednagar. And he was able to do that. He found work as a physician in the court there. He was able to do that because he could speak Arabic, like so many Jews from Spain and Portugal. And we often forget how at this time Jews often had a very special bond with Muslims, not only because they shared a language, Arabic, but also because they operated in the same trading networks across the Indian Ocean, but also across the Silk Roads. I think it's very important in this day and age for us to remember that Jews and Muslims were often allies, comrades, and deeply intimate with each other. And the story of Garcia da Horta reminds us of that. The other Firangi who became Goan and became Indian is Thomas Stevens, also known as Patri Guru, who was a Jesuit, but not your typical Jesuit. He came to Goa as a young man. He was supposed to be a priest committed to converting young Brahmin men. And to a certain extent he did that, but something else happened. He fell in love with Marathi, and he fell in love with the land here. In particular, he fell in love with the nariyal, the coconut. And something happened to him. He became a linguist. He wrote the first book, grammar book about Konkani. And he ended up writing this extraordinary Purana.
The Krista Purana.
Krista Purana.
That's right.
Which the name came later.
Yeah.
He called it the Pele Purana. Yes, it talks about Jesus and his life. It interestingly calls Jesus a Swami. But much of the book is a paean. If it worships anything, it's less Jesus than the coconut. and Marathi. The opening stanzas of the Purana are all about how beautiful Marathi is. He said in a letter elsewhere that Marathi feels like coconut water on his tongue. He says it's more beautiful than a peacock. It's more beautiful than the Kalpataru. And the Kalpataru, at least in this part of the world, was not the Bodhi tree like it is in the East. It was the coconut
tree.
So, two very interesting stories
Amazing.
about Indophiles like me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So now, final question for this short interview, and that is, what do you like about India the most?
What do I like most? There's so many things. Clearly, I love my partner, who is from here. I love something that many people find overwhelming. I love the mess, and I'm not talking about the kachara. I'm talking about the fact that everything is sort of unruly and disorganized. I love the linguistic mess. I spoke about how Indians are very accustomed to starting a thought in one language, moving to a second, even moving to a third if need be. I actually find that extraordinary. My students sometimes say, but Professor, that means that we don't have the command of language you do. We're dilettantes, we speak in one language, then waft into a second. I said, yes, but it means you have this extraordinary capacity to think elsewhere.
Yeah.
To move outside your frame of reference,
Yeah.
To take on board another way of thinking.
Yeah.
And this is something that people who come from monolingual cultures do not have.
Yeah.
No matter what may be happening in the larger narratives of the nation about sort of one religion, one language, etc., there is this irreducible plurality about India that I think is not only this country's best hope, but is the world's best hope. An ability to connect across differences.
Yeah.
Yes, there are big problems here too. The abomination of caste, the communal violence that is happening. But there is still this extraordinary capacity for hospitality because of living with neighbors who speak different languages, eat different food, pray to different gods. There is a capacity in many corners still for empathy and solidarity that I find absolutely delicious.
Wonderful. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time,
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Robert.
Khuda Hafiz and Namaste.
Khuda Hafiz.